In a conflict where Sherman tanks faced off against Tigers and atomic bombs determined the fate of nations, one sidearm achieved something extraordinary. It became simultaneously the most feared and the most desired weapon on the battlefield. The German Luger P08 pistol was not merely a tool of war. It transformed into a psychological symbol that haunted the dreams of Allied soldiers, while paradoxically becoming the most coveted trophy among them. Imagine for a moment, you are an American soldier on the beaches of Normandy, and upon spotting the unmistakable silhouette of this weapon in the hands of a German officer, your heart races not only from the imminent danger, but from the complex mixture of fear and fascination that this pistol represents. This is the story of how a weapon created at the beginning of the 20th century transcended its military function to become a cultural icon that would define the perception of power, precision, and prestige during humanity's darkest years. What you are about to discover goes beyond German engineering. It is about how an object can carry the psychological weight of an entire war. The story of the Luger P08 begins in 1898, when Austrian engineer Georg Luger perfected the design of the Borchardt C93 semi-automatic pistol at Deutsche Waffen- und Munitionsfabriken. Luger was not simply creating a weapon, he was forging what would become the standard of excellence in portable firearms. The name Parabellum derives from the Latin si vis pacem, Parabellum. If you want peace, prepare for war, a philosophy that would echo through the following decades. In 1900, Switzerland became the first country to officially adopt the Luger pistol, recognizing its technical superiority over conventional revolvers of the era. The German army, initially skeptical, conducted rigorous tests between 1904 and 1908, comparing the Luger with other available semi-automatic pistols. The results were unequivocal. The Luger surpassed all competitors in accuracy, reliability, and ease of handling. In 1908, it was officially adopted as the Pistole 08, replacing the antiquated Reichsrevolver M1879. During World War I, more than 2 million units were produced, establishing the Luger's reputation as the pistol of choice for German officers. But what made this weapon so special were not just its technical specifications, it was the engineering philosophy behind it, an obsessive pursuit of perfection that would become the hallmark of German industry. The technical specifications of the Luger P08 reveal why it became legendary among soldiers and collectors. With an overall length of 8.74 inches and weighing 1.93 pounds, the pistol offered a perfect balance between portability and stability. Its 4.06-inch barrel provided exceptional accuracy, capable of hitting targets at 164 feet with deadly consistency. The 9,19 mm Parabellum caliber, developed specifically for this weapon, propelled projectiles at 1,948 feet per second, a velocity that guaranteed effective stopping power. The 8-round magazine, though smaller than some modern pistols, was considered adequate for the standards of the time. The short recoil mechanism with articulated breech was a masterpiece of engineering, allowing smooth and reliable operation even under the most adverse battlefield conditions. The grip angled at 55 degrees, provided natural and intuitive aiming, while the single-action trigger offered a clean and predictable shot. Each component was manufactured with extremely tight tolerances, resulting in a weapon that functioned like a Swiss watch. German soldiers frequently reported that their Lugers continued functioning perfectly after years of intensive use, a reliability that would become legendary. This mechanical precision was not accidental. It was the result of decades of refinement and an industrial culture that valued excellence above mass production. When the first Allied soldiers encountered the Luger P08 in combat during World War I, they immediately recognized they were facing something special. Sergeant James Morrison, of the 1st American Infantry Division, wrote in his diary in 1918, "Today I saw a German officer with one of those automatic pistols. The sound it makes is different, drier, more precise. When he fired, I knew I was facing a superior weapon." This first impression would intensify dramatically during World War II. The Luger was not just a weapon, it was a status symbol within the German military hierarchy. Wehrmacht officers, Luftwaffe pilots, and SS members carried their Lugers with pride, knowing they possessed the world's finest pistol. For Allied soldiers, spotting a Luger meant they were facing an experienced and well-equipped officer, someone who represented the most dangerous element of the German army. The pistol's distinctive design, with its angular silhouette and unique breech mechanism, became instantly recognizable on the battlefields of Europe and the Pacific. American soldiers began developing a complex relationship with the weapon. They feared its lethal precision, but secretly admired its superior engineering. This duality, fear and fascination, would define Allied perception of the Luger P08 throughout the war. The psychological impact of the Luger P08 transcended its technical capabilities, creating an aura of invincibility around its bearers. Allied soldiers developed a kind of Luger syndrome, an irrational but understandable fear of the deadly precision associated with the weapon. Corporal Tommy Rodriguez, veteran of the Italian campaign, recalled, "You could hear the distinctive sound of a Luger from hundreds of meters away. It was different from any other pistol, sharper, more threatening. When we heard that sound, we knew there was an experienced marksman nearby." This reputation was not unfounded. Field reports documented that German officers armed with Lugers consistently outperformed Allied soldiers in pistol duels, not only due to the weapon's superiority, but also due to the intensive training they received. The Luger became a psychological force multiplier, enabling a single German officer to intimidate entire groups of enemy soldiers. Allied propagandists, recognizing the weapon's symbolic power, began portraying it in films and posters as the definitive symbol of the Nazi threat. This demonization campaign, ironically, only increased soldiers' fascination with the pistol. Veterans reported recurring dreams where they faced German officers armed with Lugers, a manifestation of the psychological trauma caused by the weapon's reputation. The simple act of surrendering to an officer carrying a Luger was seen as more humiliating than surrendering to someone with a common weapon. Paradoxically, the same weapon that terrorized Allied soldiers became the most coveted war trophy of the conflict. This transformation from symbol of terror to object of desire reveals the complex psychology of combatants during World War II. Capturing a Luger P08 represented more than simply disarming an enemy. It was a symbolic victory over supposed German technical superiority. Captain Robert Hayes, intelligence officer of the 82nd Airborne Division, observed, "Our men risked their lives to get a Luger. It was as if owning one was proof that you had faced and defeated the best the Germans had to offer." The value of a captured Luger on the military black market reached the equivalent of 3 months' pay for a private, an astronomical sum for the time. Soldiers developed elaborate techniques to hunt Lugers, studying German uniforms to identify which officers likely carried the coveted pistol. This obsession became so intense that Allied commanders issued specific orders prohibiting soldiers from unnecessarily exposing themselves to danger just to capture trophies. Ironically, many German soldiers began using their Lugers as bargaining chips during surrenders, offering the weapon in exchange for preferential treatment as prisoners of war. The pistol had become a valuable commodity that transcended battle lines. The obsessive quest for captured Lugers led to tragicomic and dangerous situations that illustrate the weapon's psychological power. German soldiers, aware of Allied covetousness, began using abandoned Lugers as bait for explosive traps. Lieutenant Michael O'Brien, combat engineer of the 3rd Armored Division, reported, "We found a Luger perfectly positioned on a table in an abandoned house in Cologne. It looked like a gift from the gods, but something wasn't right. When we examined it more closely, we discovered it was connected to a grenade. The Germans knew our weakness for these pistols and exploited it against us." This psychological tactic forced Allied soldiers to develop specific protocols for dealing with apparently abandoned Lugers. Field manuals were updated to include warnings about trophy traps, and experienced soldiers learned to resist the temptation to grab a Luger without first carefully checking for explosives. Despite these dangers, the hunt for Lugers continued unabated. Soldiers developed a complex internal market, trading rations, cigarettes, and even ammunition for captured Lugers. Some specialized in authenticating captured pistols, checking serial numbers and manufacturing marks to determine their real value. The irony was palpable. A weapon created to kill Allied soldiers had become the most desired object among them, creating a parallel economy based entirely on the prestige associated with German engineering. The production of the Luger P08 during World War II reveals both the ambition and limitations of the German war machine. Between 1939 and 1942, the Mauser factory in Oberndorf produced approximately 400,000 units annually, an impressive pace that demonstrated the priority given to the weapon by German military leadership. Each pistol required 47 separate machining operations and 12 hours of specialized labor, a significant investment of resources during a time of total war. quality standards remained rigorously high until 1943, when war pressure began affecting production. Skilled workers were transferred to more urgent armament projects, and Luger quality began to decline subtly. German veterans noticed the difference. Lugers produced after 1943 showed slightly larger tolerances and less refined finishing. Major Hans Kruger, Wehrmacht artillery officer, observed in his memoirs, "My 1940 Luger functioned like a Swiss precision machine. The one I received in 1944 was still superior to any Allied pistol, but you could feel that something had changed in the quality." By 1945, with German factories under constant bombardment and shortages of critical materials, Luger production virtually ceased. The last units produced were assembled with parts from different batches, creating functional pistols that lacked the uniformity that had made the Luger legendary. This quality deterioration symbolized the general decline of German industrial capacity. The encounter between Allied soldiers and the reality of German engineering through the Luger P08 created a profound ideological transformation that would echo far beyond the war's end. American soldiers, raised in a culture that celebrated the industrial superiority of Detroit and Pittsburgh, confronted tangible evidence that Germans had, in many aspects, surpassed American technology. Sergeant William Thompson, a Detroit mechanic before the war, wrote to his wife in 1944, "I disassembled a Luger today. Every piece is a work of art. It makes our .45 pistols look like primitive hammers. It's humbling to admit, but they are decades ahead of us in small arms design." This revelation forced a fundamental reevaluation of German capabilities. Soldiers who had been conditioned to see Germans as irrational fanatics discovered they faced adversaries with superior technology in many areas. The Luger became a tangible symbol of this technical superiority, a constant reminder that Allied victory would depend more on numbers and resources than technological superiority. Intelligence officers began studying captured Lugers not just as trophies, but as evidence of German industrial capabilities. Detailed technical reports were sent to Washington, warning of the need to accelerate American armament development. The Luger had become an involuntary teacher, giving the Allies valuable lessons about precision engineering and functional design. The legacy of the Luger P08 extended far beyond World War II battlefields, influencing firearm development and military culture for decades. After the war, American and British engineers meticulously studied the Luger's design, incorporating its principles into future projects. The Browning high-power pistol, which would become NATO standard, incorporated several innovations inspired by the Luger. The 9.19 Parabellum cartridge, developed specifically for the Luger, became the world's most widely adopted pistol caliber, used by police and military forces in more than 60 countries. Allied veterans who brought captured Lugers home discovered they possessed not just war trophies, but valuable investments. By the 1960s, a Luger P08 in good condition was worth more than $500, a substantial sum at the time. Collectors developed an almost religious obsession with the pistol, studying production variations, manufacturing marks, and histories of specific units. The Luger appeared in countless war films, always portrayed as the definitive German officer's weapon. This cultural representation solidified its status as an icon, transcending its original function to become a recognizable symbol of World War II. Military museums around the world display Lugers as centerpieces of their collections, recognizing their historical and technical significance. The pistol that once symbolized the Nazi threat had transformed into a cultural artifact representing the complexity of war and reluctant respect for German engineering. The story of the Luger P08 culminates in a powerful symbolic moment: the German surrender in May 1945, when thousands of officers handed over their pistols to the victorious Allies. This act represented more than the simple transfer of armaments. It symbolized the end of an era of German technical supremacy and recognition that even the most refined engineering could not overcome Allied determination and resources. General Dwight Eisenhower, accepting the German surrender, observed a pile of Lugers surrendered by defeated officers and commented, "These pistols represent the best of German engineering, but also their greatest weakness: obsession with perfection at the expense of practicality." Allied soldiers who could finally examine Lugers without combat danger discovered details that confirmed their reputation: manufacturing tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch, finishing that rivaled fine jewelry, and functionality that remained impeccable after years of intensive use. Many veterans kept their captured Lugers as tangible reminders that they had faced and defeated technologically superior adversaries. The pistol that had begun as a symbol of threat transformed into a trophy of victory, and finally into a historical artifact representing the complex relationship between technology, war, and human nature. Today, when collectors and historians examine a Luger P08, they see not just a weapon, they see a testament to humanity's capacity to create beauty and precision even in instruments of destruction, and a reminder that in the end, it is people, not machines, who determine the course of history,